Hello everyone, welcome back to YouTube channel Duval Mafia here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over the head coaching candidates for the Jacksonville Jaguars going into 2022 and the current odds for the next Jaguars head coach via BetOnline and Jamie Eisner. So to get right into this, the best one on the list according to the odds at plus 150 is former Texans head coach Bill O'Brien. So Bill O'Brien is 52 years old and he coached the Houston Texans from 2014 to 2020, and he was also for 1 year in 2011 the offense coordinator for the New England Patriots. So overall, Bill O'Brien does have a pretty good resume, and I think he gets overhated a little bit. I will admit to this. Now, does this me saying I want Bill O'Brien as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars? Probably not, but I do think there's many worse options out there. And if the Jaguars do land up with Bill O'Brien, I think people need to understand that all of the negative stuff he did was as a GM and as a player personnel person. He didn't do it as a head coach. I'm not saying he was the best head coach there is or he was this elite head coach, but people need to understand he does have a very solid resume. I mean, he was with New England for that 1 year. He was also the head coach at Penn State. He was a quarterbacks coach for New England. He was wide receivers coach for New England. I mean, the guy has a pretty decent resume. He was also offensive coordinator for multiple colleges. He was a running backs coach at one point for Georgia Tech. I mean, the list goes on and what that dude has done. And if you really look back, he wasn't as terrible as the head coach of the Houston Texans. Now, I will say he is the offensive-minded coach, and a lot of the reason why the Houston Texans had success was because of their defense. So you can't really give him full credit for that. But I will also say he was the head coach of that team, and you can't rule him out as a bad candidate. And to move on to the next guy, at plus 300, it's actually Darrell Bevell, who was the interim head coach for the Jaguars this season and had a 1-3 record. And he took over for Urban Meyer. Obviously, everybody's aware of that. And his resume is not too bad either. He's been an offensive coordinator for a very long time in the league. He started out with Minnesota as the offensive coordinator from 2006 to 2010. Then he went to Seattle from 2011 to 2017. Then he went over to Detroit from 2019 to 2020. Then, of course, he came in 2021 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he was the offensive coordinator. Then he took over as interim head coach. Now, for me, Darrell Bevell actually is a pretty good option for us. I know he's not the best on the list. He's not this amazing guy. But you can't really go wrong with Darrell Bevell. I actually like what he brings. Now, am I saying that he's my number one option? Absolutely not. I think he's a safe option. I think he's a worst-case scenario for the Jaguars. I think if everybody else is a negative and the Jaguars miss out on other people on this list that I will touch on, if the Jaguars miss out on everybody else, Darrell Bevell is not a bad name to fall back on as a safety net. Now, am I saying that I want him? Again, no, not really. I mean, I don't hate Darrell Bevell. I think he's an okay offensive mind. I think he's an okay offensive coordinator. I just don't know if I like him as a head coach. I don't think he has the wherewithal to do that and be a successful head coach at the NFL level. Maybe in college he could be a head coach, but I don't think he's a good coach for the NFL level. So moving on to the next guy, it's Jim Caldwell at plus 550. And Caldwell is a guy who jumps out at me because he is a very veteran type coach. I mean, everybody knows who he is. He is 66 years old, which is kind of shocking to me. I didn't realize he was as old as he is. And he's been around for a very long time. He started out in the 1970s as a wide receivers coach for Southern Illinois. And he went to Colorado as wide receivers coach, went to Penn State as passing game coordinator, was head coach at Wake Forest for a while. Then he was an assistant head coach for the Colts for a long time. Then he was the head coach for the Colts from 2009 to 2011. Then he went to the quarterbacks coach for Ravens and was the interim offense coordinator for 2012 and 2013. Then he was the head coach for the Lions from 2014 to 2017. And he was the assistant head coach for the Miami Dolphins in 2019. Now, people, if you're not familiar with Jim Caldwell, I don't really know what to say because, I mean, the dude's been around for seemingly forever. He's been a head coach a lot as well. And honestly, most teams that he's coached, they've been a winning team. I mean, in 7 years as a head coach, he has a 62-50 record, which is a .554 winning percentage. And you really aren't going to find many coaches that have 7 years of head coach experience in the NFL and have a above 500% winning percentage. You just really won't find them. They're not very common, in all honesty. But Jim Caldwell, for me, I do like him. I think he's a very safe option. He's a good option. But the one thing for me that I don't like is I don't really consider him an offensive guru, if that makes sense. I mean, is he an offensive-minded coach? I guess yes, because he's always been on the offensive side of the football. But I really don't see Jim Caldwell as an offensive guru type of person. I think he's very old school in the way he coaches as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But I don't know if it's really what this team is looking for or this team needs. So Caldwell is a maybe for me. I like him, but I don't love him as a pick. Again, he's another safe option for the Jaguars, somebody that you can't really go wrong with. And to move on to the next guy, it's going to be Doug Pederson with a plus 750 odds. And everybody knows in 2017, Doug Pederson has a Super Bowl ring to his name. He's another coach who had a decent record in 5 years as the head coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a 42-37 record, which is .531 winning percentage. Not too bad. He was also the Kansas City offensive coordinator from 2013 to 2015. So he's another offensive-minded coach. And Doug Pederson doesn't quite have the resume as some of the other guys, as he was only in the league from 2009 to 2020 as a coordinator or as a coach of any sorts. But this doesn't make him any less of a football mind, as many have seen. The dude knows how to coach, and I actually like Doug Pederson as a coach. I think he's also what some would call a player coach. I can really see him fitting well on this team, and he is definitely one of my top higher candidates. Is he my number one candidate? I'm not sure about that, but he's definitely one of my higher ups, and I'm actually very high on Doug Pederson as a coach. I think he's a very good offensive mind. I think he's a very good coach. I think he knows how to elevate players. I mean, in 2017, not saying Nick Foles is bad, but let's be honest, he took a backup quarterback with a banged-up team, and he went on to win the Super Bowl against none other than Tom Brady and Bill Belichick as well. I mean, there's not many people who can say that they've done that. Now, I'm not saying he's this special coach and he's Bill Belichick and he's Andy Reid. I'm not saying he's on that level. But, I mean, he needs some respect on his name, in my honest opinion. Like, I think the guy's a very solid head coach. And I really think that he's what you'd call a player coach, and I think he'd be a good fit for this team. He's definitely towards the top of my list. I don't know if he's number one. I will get to my top of the list in order at the end of the video. But he's definitely high on my list. And the next guy is Byron Leftwich with plus 800 odds. Now, Byron Leftwich is an interesting one to me because even though everybody knows he played for the Jaguars, he was quarterback, he's been around football for his whole life, seemingly. I mean, the dude, you know what the dude's going to bring. He knows how to play football. He knows how to run an offense. I like him a lot as an offensive coordinator, and he doesn't have too much NFL experience from coaching. He only started coaching in 2016, and he started that with Arizona as quarterback's coach, then became the offensive coordinator, and then he went to Tampa, and he's been the offensive coordinator in Tampa for the past 3 years, working under Bruce Arians, who everybody knows Arians is that guy. And now I do like what Byron Leftwich brings to the table, and I know he has only gotten more knowledge having Bruce Arians as well as Tom Brady with him, working with him. This only makes him more intriguing to me. Now, I know for some that this makes him a little bit of a negative because it shows that he's not really the one running the show, if that makes sense. He's more or less just kind of helping and basically playing backseat. When it's needed, his help is there. But, I mean, Tom Brady and Bruce Arians, they both know what they're doing as coaches. But I will say, Byron Leftwich has shown that he does have the football knowledge on their level, and I think he is a very good coach. And I will say he's very good when it comes to passing offenses. In his 3 years, he had the 4th ranked pass offense in 2019, the 6th in 2020, and the 1st in 2021. So the dude knows how to run at passing offense. But on the other hand, he's not very good with the run, as in yardage, they had the 24th yards in 2019, the 28th yards in 2020, and the 26th yards in 2021. And now for passing offense yards-wise, they were 1 in 2019, 2 in 2020, and 1 in 2021. So the dude is an air raid offense, simple as that. Now, I do know that's partly Tom Brady and that's partly Bruce Arians, but this shows you that Byron Leftwich, if he comes here, he's going to have Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball a lot. And I really don't feel like that's what this team needs, because this team has James Robinson, as well as they just drafted Travis Etienne with a first-round pick. Even though he hasn't played yet, he's still a first-round pick, and he needs to become a focal point of this offense. And for me, I don't know if this is what that team needs, because I honestly want to see this offense become almost a run-first offense where Trevor's being benefited a lot. Because if you bring in Byron Leftwich, he's going to turn this into an air raid offense, and you're going to, yes, Trevor Lawrence is going to put up great numbers, and I know it is a passing league at this point, and I wouldn't be mad getting Byron Leftwich. He's definitely one of my higher guys. I actually like him as a mind for offense a lot, but people have to understand that this guy is going to come in and make James Robinson look like what Urban Meyer made him look like, essentially. He's not going to feed James Robinson 20 times a game. Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, but I want Jaguars fans to understand that that's not the way Byron Leftwich runs in the offense. Byron Leftwich is going to throw the ball 30 times a game as an offense coordinator and as a head coach. That's just simply what he's going to do. Now, I know it was mainly Bruce Arians with that mindset. People need to understand that's the mindset that Byron Leftwich is going to bring here after learning it from Bruce Arians and learning it from Tom Brady. Again, I'm not saying it's necessarily a negative thing, because he has all this experience and he has this understanding of how to run a passing offense, and it is a passing offense league. But I just want people to be aware that that is a concern for me, and it'll really kill this run game in all honesty. And having two running backs who are supposedly these top talents, I don't know if we want a pass-first offensive coordinator / head coach that's going to essentially make these guys useless. I mean, let's be honest. If you're giving James Robinson 10 touches a game and Travis Etienne 6 touches a game, that's not good value out of two extremely well-rounded playmakers at the running back position for us. That's just not enough value for me. So Byron Leftwich is a good candidate, and I do like him, but I really don't see him as anything special. I just can't see him fitting well with this offense. I wouldn't be mad if we got him. I think he can succeed with us, and I think he can grow as a head coach. But again, I don't know if he's the correct fit, per se. And to move on to the next guy, at plus 900 odds, it's Eric Bieniemy. Now, I've touched on Eric Bieniemy in the past, and I am a fan of him as a coach. He's been the offensive coordinator in Kansas City since 2018, and surprisingly, he's older than I thought he was. He is 52 years old, so he's not quite a young coach. I did not realize he was as old as he is. He's been around for a while. He started in college in 2001. So he's been around the league and been around football as a coach for about 20 years now, which is not a bad thing. That's a lot of experience, and it's a lot of positives. He's mainly been a running back coach or an offensive coordinator throughout his entire career. And he was the running backs coach for the Minnesota Vikings from 2006 to 2010. And he was the running backs coach for the Chiefs from 2013 to 2017. And then he eventually took over as offensive coordinator. And in his time, he's another one who's run a lot of pass-happy offense, which is ironic to me and shows me that Andy Reid is really the one calling the plays, because in most of his career, he was a running backs coach. So this makes me kind of confused as when he became the head or the offensive coordinator as Kansas City, they switched to this pass-heavy offense, and I mean, they've been top 5 in yards in all 4 years of him being an offensive coordinator. So what this shows me is that Andy Reid's really the one running the show there, and nothing against Bieniemy, but I've kind of opened my eyes a little bit on him as a coaching candidate, and he's kind of fallen down my board a bit, because let's be honest, if he's a running back coach and he basically is a running back mind, and his team is top 5 in passing yards in all of his years as an offensive coordinator, what does that tell you? It tells you that he's not the one calling the plays, as well as he's not the one putting together the playbook as much as you think. And to move on to the next guy who also has plus 900 odds, it is one of my favorite guys on this list, and is Kellen Moore. Now, I will say Kellen Moore is extremely young. He's only 32 years old, meaning we might have some players older than him on this roster if we do sign somebody, if we do bring him in as head coach. He's been the offensive coordinator for Dallas for the past 3 years, in 2019, 2020, and 2021. And believe it or not, in 2019, they had the number one overall offense yards-wise. And they had the number one overall offense yards-wise in 2021 as well. In 2020, they were only 17th in yards, and they were 8th in passing and 17th in rushing. And in 2019, they were 2nd in passing, 5th in rushing. And then in 2021, they were 2nd in passing and 9th in rushing. So even though the Dallas Cowboys do have an insanely stacked offense, this shows me that Kellen Moore is playing a valiant role, and he is helping put together plays and play design. Because people have to also understand that he worked for Jason Garrett as well as Mike McCarthy, meaning them switching head coaches and them their offense not really missing a beat shows you that Kellen Moore is actually a big part of what this offense is doing, and he's a big part of why Dak Prescott is succeeding the way he is. Him and Dak Prescott have seemingly come to the same page, and they've put together a solid 3 years, in my honest opinion. And even though he is still 32 years old, and I mean, he doesn't have much coaching, he's only been a coach since 2018, because I mean, people have to remember he was a player. Now, I know he didn't play much, but he still was a player relatively recently, I mean, within the past 10 years. And for me, he is one of the top candidates. I know he is a bit risky as he doesn't have too much coaching experience, and it could be a little bit of rushing for him. And I don't know if he would come in day one and be an amazing coach, but I really think this is a name that the Jaguars have to get on, because I could see him being a top head coach within the next couple seasons. I mean, he's that good. I'm not saying he's Sean McVay level offensive guru, but he's Sean McVay-esque in my honest opinion. Because Jason Garrett, even though he was a good offensive mind, and Mike McCarthy is another decent offensive mind, the fact that it was a turnover of head coaches and Kellen Moore's offense really didn't lose too much of a beat shows you that Kellen Moore understands what he's doing with Dak Prescott, and he's helping Dak Prescott utilize the weapons that he has, whether it's CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, and like all these guys. And if you look at our offense, if we get a true number one wide receiver, or we draft another solid wide receiver, I mean, you look at this wide receiver room and this running back room, they can grow into almost that similar level with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. I mean, you can't tell me Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard is that much above James Robinson and Travis Etienne once healthy. Like, of course the Dallas duo is better and they're more proven, but I could honestly see James Robinson and Travis Etienne having that type of effect. And this intrigues me because Kellen Moore has shown that he knows how to use both effectively and knows how to get good production out of both of them. And then for the wide receiver side of it, obviously the Cowboys probably have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the league, and this is something that Jaguars do need to work on. But, I mean, Laviska Shenault can still bounce back and become a very good wide receiver 2 or an elite wide receiver 3, in my honest opinion. Marvin Jones is still a veteran guy who has one more year left on his contract, assuming he does stay. And, I mean, even though Marvin Jones did kind of disappoint slightly this year, he's still a very solid wide receiver 2 or even a great wide receiver 3, depending on what role he plays. And then you have DJ Chark, who I'm hoping the Jaguars re-sign. He's another guy. He's a great number 2. He's a great guy to have in the room. The Jaguars are seemingly just missing that true number 1 guy. And now I still have a slight hope that DJ Chark could seemingly grow into that player because he was still gaining chemistry with Trevor Lawrence, and you saw some of those big-time throws to DJ Chark from Trevor Lawrence that you could see they were starting to get a wherewithal for each other before DJ Chark, of course, got hurt. But re-signing Chark and then drafting a guy, or even signing one in free agency, seems like a very solid. And then you bring in a guy like Kellen Moore. I mean, you could see this offense be top 10, maybe even top 5 within 1 to 2 years. That's the type of impact, and that's the type of perfect mixture that the Jaguars can get if they bring in a guy like Kellen Moore. And they also continue to build upon this offense. So moving on to the next guy, it's another guy I'm pretty high on, which is Brian Daboll, and he has 12-1 odds. And Daboll's another guy that I'm very high on as a coach. I think he's a very, very underrated coach in my honest opinion. Now, I know he hasn't been the best in his time in the league. I mean, he's bounced around a little bit. He was in Cleveland as an offensive coordinator. He was in Miami. He was in Kansas City. And then he landed up in Buffalo in 2018. and he's been there for 4 years. And in his 4 years there, they've been a top 5 offense 3 out of the 4 years, and it's been the past 3 years, funny enough. And I know he's not the best guy on the list, and he's probably not the most intriguing name, but I do like him as a building block for Trevor Lawrence. This is a guy who I think can, because you've seen what he's done with Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen came into the league and was struggling a decent bit with turnovers, whatever it was, inaccurate throws, a lot of stuff like that. And this is something slightly similar to what Trevor Lawrence is like. He's an athletic, tall, big-bodied quarterback with a cannon of an arm. And this shows me that Daboll knows what to do with these type of quarterbacks. I mean, he's turned Josh Allen into an MVP candidate, and he's turned the Bills into one of the best offenses in the league. Now, I know their run game does suffer, but I don't think that's really a Brian Daboll thing. I think that's more, in all honesty, a Buffalo Bills thing. I think there's never been a team to utilize running backs. I mean, you look down the list, they've never really had an elite running back, and God knows how long. I mean, it's probably been a decade plus since I would consider they've had a special type of running back that's had a elite year there. I don't even know if they've had a Pro Bowl running back in the past 10 years. I don't think they have. Maybe 1 year LaShawn McCoy got it or something. He might have gotten it 1 year, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one. But Brian Daboll is another guy for me that I like a lot. He's been around the block a little bit. He started coaching in 1997. At Michigan State, he was a graduate assistant coach. He was defensive assistant for the Patriots. He was a wide receivers coach for the Patriots. He was quarterbacks coach for the Jets. Then he was the offensive coordinator for the Browns, and the offensive coordinator for the Dolphins, then the Chiefs. Then he went back to New England as a tight ends coach and assistant coach. And then he came to Buffalo as an offensive coordinator, and that's where he's been. And now he's looking to possibly become a head coach for somebody. Now, I don't know if the Jaguars are too aggressive towards him, but I do like Brian Daboll, and I think he's a solid backup option for the Jaguars if they do miss out on some of the top guys. And to move on to the next guy, it is Joe Brady. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about Joe Brady because I don't really like him as a fit, and 2, I don't really feel like he's ready to be a head coach just yet. I mean, he's only 32 years old. He's only been an offensive coordinator for 2 years, and in both those years, their offense hasn't been anything special. I mean, there's not really much to him. I think he's just on this list simply for the odds. And the next guy is Matt Eberflus. I like Matt Eberflus. He's a defensive-minded coach, which is a negative for me because I kind of want an offensive-minded one to help develop Trevor Lawrence. But he was a defensive coordinator for Missouri for a while. Then he was a linebackers coach for Cleveland and then Dallas, and then he became the defensive coordinator for the Colts. And I do like him as a defensive coordinator. I think what he's done with the Indianapolis Colts defense is pretty solid work. I mean, you can't deny they've had a very solid defense, and I know Jaguars fans are very familiar with it for the past few years. And I know that he's nothing special, and I don't think he's really a true candidate. I can't really see him getting the job. I mean, I wouldn't be mad with him. I think he's a solid defensive coordinator, but I don't think he's full-on enough of a offensive mind to be a head coach, unless he gets somebody who's a very solid offensive coordinator. But again, I don't see that happening. And then the final guy on the list is Josh McDaniels. Another guy I'm not really that fond of. I mean, I don't mind him, but I don't think he's anything that special. I don't think Josh McDaniels is really the guru behind their offense. I think it's obviously Bill Belichick, and I think Josh McDaniels has just been benefiting a lot from it. And he has 20-1 odds, which is nothing special to me. I mean, I don't really think that's anything special. I don't think he's really even up for the job. I mean, he also got offered a head coaching job, and he turned it down to go back to New England. So, in all honesty, I don't think he's going to even leave New England, even if he was offered the job. But Josh McDaniels doesn't really jump out to me. And as the final part of this video, my top 5 guys in order would probably be number 5, Byron Leftwich, number 4, Jim Caldwell, number 3, Brian Daboll, number 2, Doug Pederson, and number 1, Kellen Moore. That's probably my top 5 guys as it sits right now on this date. Now, obviously, this can change, and obviously, it can go a lot of different ways. There's a lot of guys that I like that Jaguars have been looking into or have been rumored to be linked to. And I hope the Jaguars do make the right decision with this, whether it is one of these coaches or it is somebody else or whoever it may be. But without further ado, I'm going to wrap up this video. So if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like. If you are new, make sure to subscribe. And as always, peace out, Duval.